trembling with fear. Weird. Oh, no. You're welcome here anytime. It's just, last Halloween we did Robert the Doll, who's really cool, and I love that guy. But I don't know, that one gets to people, and I was half expecting something horrifying to happen to you when you got home. Or that you'd be too nervous to come back. My fear's actually been sticking up all month. Not that you're not invited. No. I wasn't intending to scare you off. I love sharing these ghostly tales with you, more than most things, and I'd never want you to think otherwise. Oh, this book that I have to hold in two paws. It's a long story. I'm trying something out. You know, I've been doing ghosts and werewolves, mostly werewolves, honestly, lately, and I think that exploring those themes is quite important in uncovering the paranormal underbelly of the world, but, well, it's the dead month between Samhain and Yule, and there's a stark lack of mystical boundaries preventing... I know, I'm sounding all woo-woo. This is all silly, witchy stuff. But I've been trying to see if I couldn't summon something older or weirder and distinctly not Catholic. I assure you that I was not speaking in Latin. Fun fact, though, actually, Zuma's learning Latin. I'm distracted. You're here for a story, not extended Foxxo Esoterica deep lore. Speaking of paranormal underbellies and such, I do have a legend from down under. Underbelly. It's a good joke. I digress. Let's discuss the Bunyip. Bunyip. Fun word. And this one's a cryptid, but the more that I read on it, it feels like it's something deeper, something a little bit more legend adjacent. Like with Robert the Doll not being a ghost. I'm talking too much. Come in. It's cold outside and a little bit rainy, and I have hot tea and or hot mulled wine. And no, this legend isn't cursed, I promise. Welcome to the foxhole at Foxxo Esoterica. I promise I was sober when I wrote this. Welcome back to Foxxo Esoterica, the paranormal podcast wherein a fox furry is, once again, going to have a few drinks and simp over the cryptid that just so happens to be tonight's topic. This one's not so werewolf-esque though, so at least there's variety in this podcast. I'm your host, the very thirsty Forseti Fox, and let's just say the aquatic bunyip is looking like a tall glass of water. Tonight I am joined by close fur friend and biologist who studies many a manner of aquatic freshwater things, Twister the Husky, back in the States. Housekeeping stuff though, real quick. Like I said last month, I'm ditching the new moon full moon model and just focusing on esoteric stories, less rare occasion pop-up. So, this will be a normal episode in terms of form. I'm also trying to do another one on the 25th of this month, so welcome to Double Duty Podcast Hours. That being said though, I don't have too much in the realm of housekeeping this evening, so let's cut this intro short and get right to the story, shall we? I think we shall. Talking too much. So, welcome to the podcast, everybody. I'm joined with special friend and special co-guest Twister the Husky this evening. Everybody, round of applause for him.
Yay.
Yeah, people are applauding.
Hello, everyone.
Tell us a bit about yourself. What's your vibe? What all do you get up to?
Well, I do fish research at Michigan State, which is super fun and rewarding.
I think it's really cool as a job, especially considering you do a lot of like field research stuff, but also just it's great that you're like into your passion and you're a biologist and that's like something you really like doing and you're finding your stride in it.
It's very rare, but it's great. I mean, if I went into something like IT, sure I'd be getting paid more, but I think there's something to be said for just loving what you do. So.
For sure. It's a cool job.
Yeah.
Twister
really
is a... Oh, sorry. I was cutting you off.
Oh, no, you're good.
Appreciate you. Twister is a longtime fur friend from Michigan when I was living in Michigan. No longer in that country, because Michigan is a country and such, but it's fun to be chatting with you online and stuff. What time is it by you right now?
It is
Just
8:15 p.m.
Yeah, it might be 2 in the morning for me, but I also
Well,
don't have to be anywhere until like 1 tomorrow, so this is I'm prepared for it.
excellent. Well, I'm glad I'm not keeping you up past your bedtime.
I have no bedtime. Before I jump into the podcast, I like asking all of my new guests 4 different questions. They're mostly about your beliefs and thoughts on paranormal stuff, but of course, feel free to answer them only if it's comfy for you, if you're ready.
I am ready.
Cool, cool. The first question is, do you believe in ghosts, cryptids, aliens, or anything else considered unexplainable or paranormal?
Of those, I definitely believe in aliens. Definitely believe. I don't know. I don't think they're the grays that we think of when, in like typical sci-fi media. I do think there's life out there, somewhere in the universe, but I don't think it's what we think of when we think of aliens. It's probably single cellular amoeboids or something along those lines. I enjoy watching things like, the Ghost Hunter series and stuff.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I don't really find it. It's I don't know. I don't think it's that kind of stuff strikes me as just kind of, being for entertainment purposes rather than, oh my God, we actually found a ghost.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's like 0 ghost shows out there where the ghost hunters are like, we went to the house and nothing happened. We were just there. Cool episode,
Yeah.
everybody.
But you know what? It's entertaining. It's entertaining to see people, just these guys freaking out in a house.
For sure. That's
It's
what
great.
I hope this podcast is. If you're not the ghostiest boy of all time, I hope you love antics.
Well, that's the thing. Like that's why I wanted to like come on here is even if it's not something that, as a scientist, it's like how can I verify that ghosts and cryptids are real? I can't. I also can't verify that they're not real. So
For sure.
It's I don't know. So that's kind of why I want to be on here. Is just it's fun to kind of hear these stories, even if maybe I'm not super even if I'm not like even if I don't believe them fully. It's very entertaining to me.
For sure. I appreciate that opinion, and I think it's always great to have... I think a lot of the guests end up being on the skeptical side more than the believer side, but that's great, because I need a balance usually.
Yeah, that's definitely a good thing.
The second question, probably I already know the answer, but do you have any experiences with any of these sorts of things? And if so, would you care to share a brief story at all?
I do not personally. There's nothing I can think of where I've had a paranormal experience. I guess if seeing the movie Paranormal Activity in theaters counts, maybe that.
It's more than I've seen of that franchise.
It's probably the only one that's worth seeing.
How many are there? Are there like 4?
26. I don't know. I just made that up. But
Cool. I
there's
wasn't
probably
going to
26.
question it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like Saw, It just they just keep making them because why not?
Yeah.
Screw you.
People
You'll
like
watch it. Yeah.
Y'all sit here and watch the ghost thing. But yeah, that's
exactly.
also fair. The third question, then, jumping right into it. Do you follow an organized religion, or are you more agnostic-minded? Does the existence of the esoteric and paranormal line up with your religious, scientific, and/or agnostic beliefs?
I think I would echo what I said earlier, first by stating that I am agnostic, and then by saying I can't refute the existence of a superior being or a higher being of any kind, but I also can't really confirm it. So, there's really no that's kind of where I stand on it.
For sure.
It's just like maybe not, but, does it really matter? I don't think so.
That's always one of the best outlooks to that sort of philosophical exploration, I find.
I believe so too.
I respect it. The very last question, do you have anything you'd like to plug?
Oh, God. No, actually, I don't think I do. Except that I played Outer Wilds recently. So if you have not played that, play it, please.
I'll jump into it. That's for PS4, right?
Yeah, I think it's on PS4.
Cool.
Anyway, it's a game that, like, everybody who plays it, they can't talk about it because it's like a very spoiler-rich game.
Oh.
So saying anything about that game, saying anything about it is a spoiler. Just go play it. Outer Wilds. Cool. On PS4 now.
Nobody look it up. Don't look up the Wikipedia for it.
Yeah, don't look up a guide or anything. Just play it. Did that sound like an ad?
No.
Okay, good.
It did.
I don't really have I don't have an ad voice, so.
Or do you want it to have? Because I can retcon that answer.
Just put like a jingle at the end of it or something like that.
Yes, that was a great ad. Outer Wilds.
Oh my God.
I'm not gonna look up the plot, but definitely, if you want to add space, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
The encyclopedic collection for this evening is going to be the Iromabu Phantasma category with the folked up stories, meaning we're going to be tackling something of the more down-to-earth, ghosty, spirity vibe, and definitely something with the older folk tales that, predate the 1700s a tad bit. And
I'm into that.
I'm here for it also. The potion brewed for me this evening, i.e. the alcoholic drink, is Eierhasi Aromatisiris Weinhaltiges Getränke. Use my German skills if you're all ready for it. It's the egg of the bunny. That'll be important later. Bunny. And it's an aromatic Christmas drink. And I think it's eggnog, but it might be a spirit, and I'm afraid.
The way you describe that drink, it doesn't sound good, but it doesn't sound bad.
It sounds like an adventure, and that's all it needs to be. It's
Great.
not a beer this time. I usually do beer for the podcast, and I'm mixing it up today. This is something.
Ooh.
It's that crack though, because it has a twist off lid. What might you be enjoying this evening?
I have a M43 from what brewery is this again? I forget.
Oh, that one was
It's an Old Nation beer. Yeah, I'm not usually an IPA guy, but M43 is pretty darn good. It's one of my go-tos.
I'm not the biggest IPA guy unless there's like certain Michigan breweries nail it. That one does a really good one. Actually, one of my friends from high school and like a person that's been on the podcast, Jacob Evans, he and I went camping before I moved out, and we ended up getting this IPA called Fruit Noops, and that was divine. I'm also going to try the Eierhasi now, so God forgive me.
I love that name already. Oh my God. Also, you can never go wrong with Two Hearted. So.
Oh yeah, Two Hearted is good. Speaking of things that are good, I have nothing in front of me that's good. This is the fucking weirdest thing I've ever drank in my life.
Oh no.
It's
what?
Got notes of orange, and it definitely has milk in it, and then it tastes like eggnog for a second, and I don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, that doesn't sound particularly appetizing.
We're gonna drink it this evening. That's what we're doing. I was told by Zuma that apparently there's a pun in here about Eierhasi, which is eggs of a bunny, and I think that pun has to do with testicles. So for the German fans out there, you know what's up. You get the joke. I don't
Same.
get the pun. But I maybe don't recommend purchasing it if you visit Germany.
Yeah, that I think I will pass on that. I think I will stick to my beer.
That's a good idea. I like the beer. We're mixing it up for sometimes on the podcast, and you learn lessons along the way. Without further ado, though, you ready for me to jump into the introductory bit?
I am so ready.
Let's do it up. I shouldn't drink this and then hype myself up for something, because it's not going to hype me up for anything. Water. I have water. Alrighty.
There you go.
Alright. If someone brings up Australia, one of the first things that comes to my mind, personally, is the plethora of godless, feckless, loveless fauna present in the area. Spiders the size of a small child, swarms of magpies that blot out the sun, emus that the government felt compelled to declare war on at one time, who also won said conflict. Great Emu War. Wikipedia, check it out. Not to say that Australia isn't a wonderful place, both in ecology and culture, but I don't feel as though I would be entirely comfortable in the outback at any given point in time. So, it should follow that Australian cryptids also showcase bizarre, dangerous, and decidedly inconsistent qualities. Hanging out at the Murray River, Australia's largest river, this cryptid has been described as a giant starfish just hanging out on the land, a furred, tusked, horse-like thing with a snout and a beak like an owl, a cross between a seal and a dog, which, you know, in hindsight, could be a seal or a dog. And last but not least, this. I'm going to send a picture over Discord for you to see, because it's...
Okay.
Oh, you know what?
Alright.
Yeah, the second one, that looks like a little dude that I can't describe.
Hang on, let me get this open.
You're all good? This is a painting. Jumping back into it. We're looking up the picture now. A shout out to Gerald Markham Lewis, who painted this in 1935. I don't know if he was paying attention when people were describing this cryptid. He might have just painted it. Everybody pause and look it up. Yes, I am padding the intro so that the picture doesn't throw off the formatting in my notes. There, we're good.
It looks like something from a Dr. Seuss book.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say like a spore creature.
Yes, absolutely. That is absolutely like the perfect spore creature.
I love that. This photo's great because I don't think anybody's ever described it looking like that. The painter was just like, "Oh, Bunyip, I know what's up." I just spoiled it, but you also looked at the link, so you know what it is.
Yeah, I already know. It's fine.
His name comes from either the Wemba Wemba or Wagaya indigenous people's word for devil spirit or evil. And unless you've paused to look up specifically the Markham Lewis painting, you'll find that it's misleadingly kind of cute sometimes. Tonight, though, let's talk about the Bunyip. Do you know anything about this guy?
I do not, except that I want a Bunyip fursona now.
Yeah, I like the ones that don't look like the weird painting, because it's people have drawn him very nicely. It's just like a little watery dude with seaweed and a lot of different just random features that work for me.
I actually think I'm just going to submit that painting as a ref sheet to a suit maker and see what I get.
Oh, you know what? I might actually look it up. Bunyip fursuit. I want to see if anybody's done that yet. I'm also going to spell fursuit correctly because I typed way too fast.
It is like, I mean, it's a hard word to spell. It's like two words together, so
yep.
I can see why you'd have trouble.
People make fun of me on this podcast all the time, and I never catch it. That's why I got the bunny alcohol, because it's the Bunyip. It doesn't have to do with rabbits. It's just some fun with words. I can't find a fursuit, everybody, online. I'm so sorry.
It's a really cute name, too, for a cryptid.
Yeah, especially one that's, like, considered to be dangerous and scary.
Yeah, it is, like, the painting is not terrifying to me. Some of these other things are.
Mm-hmm.
The painting itself is kind of just cute.
The Bunyip has kind of morphed into this sort of, like, figure that children's book authors and schools use as mascots and stuff. Like, it's got really cute, and I'm here for that always.
Yeah.
That being said, the sources for this story this evening, always gotta plug Wikipedia. Love Wikipedia.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, it just can't miss with Wikipedia. I also used the book Australia's Folklore of Fear, written by Robert and Nicholas Holden. the book Aboriginal Biocultural Knowledge in Southeastern Australia, Perspectives of Early Colonists, written by Fred Caher, Ian D. Clark, and Philip A. Clark, an article titled The Bunyip Hunt by Tim the Yowie Man on the website Traveller, and last but not least, the Murray Bridge Bunyip, which is an entirely different thing, but far more horrifying, and I'll get to it later. This is an article on Atlas Obscura, written by Graham Wortwalker. But without further ado, let's get to the... I'm going to have a little sip of this again, and every time I do, I can't treat it like a casual experience. I have to prepare myself psychologically.
Now that you've tasted it once, you just have...
trauma just a little bit.
It's just a terrible experience every time.
It doesn't taste like alcohol, and that's weird to me.
That's dangerous.
It doesn't. It's like definitely alcohol because it's Germany and it's very. It was in the alcohol section, but like it's
fair.
So weird, and I can't ever. There's nothing like it I've had before. I digress, though. We're doing the Bunyip, jumping in. A majority of Bunyip sightings, in addition to just the cultural origins of people who describe the Bunyip, take place along the Murray River in southeastern Australia, crossing through the states of New South Wales and South Australia Victoria. Also known as the Malewa in the Ngarrindjeri language, or the Tongala in the Yorta Yorta language, it is the longest river in Australia. There's actually a legend based on the formation of the river that relates to the Bunyip. Our hero, Ngurunderi, is a fisherman who's trying to pursue Pondi, also known as the Murray cod, which is an animal totem, so he appeared in the shape of a man on a raft. The cod was carving a winding escape route, and when Ngurunderi accidentally ran his raft aground, it would make a tributary, and he'd have to make a new raft. He also had 2 wives at a point show up, and then the Pondi gets away, and then they decide to give up and settle on the shore somewhere, and that's when they meet a water spirit known as Muljikwank, who gave them bad luck for the rest of their days, and I'm assuming it's because they failed to get the Pondi. This guy is different from the Bunyip, the Muljikwank, in that it's a giant, like, half mermaid, half fish thing with, like, less human qualities, but it also preys on the shores along this river, much like the Bunyip, who doesn't have a consistent description anyway. So it definitely features into the story. There is actually... Oh, yeah, sorry. Go for it.
It kind of reminds me of the kappa in Japanese folklore.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good connection. I like yokai type stuff like that, or like river spirits and water spirits that drag people down. It's always such an interesting trope.
Yeah, it's terrifying, but I love it.
This one's interesting because there's a degree to which the concept of the Bunyip can just apply to water spirits in Australia, but there's definitely a distilled description later on. Kind of just starts amorphous.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, just hearing, the origins of it so far.
I was going to interject with one anecdote where there's like, oh, we're doing a sighting, and then we'll get into more legend stuff, because I like doing that, like keeping people on their toes. There is one anecdote wherein a full steamship full of European people were traveling up the Murray River with a few of the Australian Aboriginal elders on board, though no one has any names in this story. It's all kind of anonymous and apocryphal. But the ship rocks, and scaly claws grab the sides of the steamship. The captain pulls out a gun, but is warned by the aforementioned elders that he should probably not shoot this thing. The captain ignores that, and then shoots it a bunch, before the creature recedes. Days later, the captain gets a bunch of red sores and blisters, and they keep growing until the captain dies in agony and illness without anybody figuring out what killed him. It's a story without names. Is it apocryphal? Yes. But I like it. It's interesting.
I mean, if they're dead, do their names matter?
No, but they help me make the story feel more real.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Moving on in my notes, though. The Bunyip is a legend that got passed down through oral tradition, and besides a few paintings and such of beings that were described as the Bunyip, there were no written stories on this guy until the European people came in and decided to write the stories down. Keep in mind, though, that everybody in Europe was really weird about new animals and taxonomy. Like, For an example, in 1799, when zoologist George Shaw sent pictures of the platypus, everyone in England was like, what the fuck? Why the bill? Why the mammalian egg laying? Why is there poison? This is a fake thing. And it took a really long while to get them to believe that the platypus is real. Anytime anyone heard a description of an animal and or mythical being that could potentially be Australia's fauna, anybody who studied animals was like, hold on, that's really weird. I'm going to spend a significant amount of time researching this just in case it's real. And so that's why everybody was really interested in the bunyip as an animal back then. They kind of just expected it to show up for real. However, considering that it might just be another word for demon or evil spirit or something, a lot of animals were described as the bunyip.
That's interesting because I can see Australia just with its very, unique animals having some of those legends that it's like it could be real, right?
Yeah, I think the echidna also kind of falls into that category where people are like, there's no way that's a real thing, right?
Yeah, echidnas are very strange.
Yeah, anything that lays eggs, I guess.
Yeah.
And is a mammal. The bunyip is also described as the Mulyawonk by the Ngarrindjeri people. This creature, though, has special magic, specifically the ability to utter a loud noise that gives you a horrible disease. And then sometimes it also has the ability to make people fall in love with it. Other groups that are described by their location as opposed to a name in the Gippsland area refer to it as the Tanutbun. And at the Hunter River area to the east, it's called the Wawi. And in the Murrumbidgee River area in the south central area, it's called the Katampai. I bring this up because the whole Murray River is like 1,500-ish miles / 2,500-ish kilometers. And there's a lot of cultures on the river that developed independently. But everybody has their weird seal-esque water monster legend and or a collage of various mermaid-esque water monster legends. So everybody's got one in this river. Like, something's in the river.
Oh, huh.
A lot of tellings of bunyip legends are speculated to have come from Australian Aboriginal people's desires to keep their children from leaving camp at night, or just in general, because there's a lot of things in the wild that are capable of doing harm in Australia, and so a lot of people speculate that the bunyip was sort of a boogeyman in that regard. But at that point, you could also just tell children, there's a really real crocodile in the river, so don't go into the river. And it feel like it would work.
Yeah, I mean, I do find it funny how certain cultures have their legends to kind of keep children in line. And yet, the very real threat of a crocodile would
work.
Probably have the same effect.
I guess it's like tricky to imagine it because I feel like in Michigan, I don't think anything in the wild can actually pose a threat to people. Like maybe, I think wolves used to be there forever ago, but that's like it.
Yeah, I don't really think there's anything in Michigan that would work for a legend like that.
Yeah, I feel like in Australia, there's like a whole plethora of animals that can make a child afraid.
Yeah,
but
I guess if you were at the zoo, right?
Oh yeah.
Maybe you have a very slight chance of being eaten by a lion. I mean, slim considering they're behind a cage, but
one must be an acrobat to achieve that feat.
But there's no ceiling, so
I don't enjoy this beverage. I really don't.
You keep drinking it.
I'm drinking it because of the podcast. I have to become imbibed.
Yeah, you have to become the bunyip to tell the story.
This is the bunyip TF juice, if there ever was one. But yeah, the bunyip is kind of, some historians and folklorists are like, this is a boogeyman, it keeps the children away. And it's like, I can buy that, but there's also a lot of other scary things in Australia that are spider related. Beyond that, though, there is also a religious background to the bunyip outside of that, like, he shows up in religio-cultural dreaming worldview of Australia, which is kind of like the cultural religion of Aboriginal people at that time. The Bunyip do show up in various stories of important figures, but it's usually violent. For example, Bunjil, the wedge-tailed eagle, was an important deity who was also an eagle, and one time he dropped his mother from a great height, and as revenge, he dropped his stepmother from a great height, and as revenge, she pulled a bunyip out of the river, made it mad, and then got Bunjil caught in the fray of the bunyip's anger, where he was ripped to shreds. But the other birds helped bring the pieces back together so he could pass on to the afterlife.
So, this thing that could fly was eaten by a creature from the river.
Yeah.
That's how that... Okay.
That's how that shook up.
Huh.
That's, yeah.
That kind of makes the bunyip a little more terrifying.
That's something that's interesting you brought up, because a lot of times, it's just in, like, folklore in general, there's usually, like, things that are big and scary have the ability to do damage to anything, be it by land or sea or sky. I was just watching, like, Beowulf with the puma, and Grendel is like, I'm gonna sink a ship, even though can Grendel swim? Who's to say?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I just imagine hearing this story and being like, oh, like this creature from the river, like, snatched an eagle out of the sky. We're screwed.
Oh yeah.
Like, that's kind of terrifying.
Like when the Velociraptor can open the door in Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
It's over.
or like when the spoilers for Game of Thrones for anybody who actually cares about the last season.
We can spoil Game of Thrones now. The world is free.
Okay, great. When you're on Greyjoy shoots a dragon out of the sky from the sea, because that makes sense.
Yeah, and the other dragon just destroys the city with a lot of the other cannon trebuchet stick shooters being there.
Yeah, every single arrow misses after that.
Yep.
Anyway, this isn't about Game of Thrones.
This is a Game of Thrones dragging podcast now. We'll fight it. But yeah, it's like an interesting trope. Once something gets scary enough, it can take on the heavens. The Bunyip has also killed Totiargail, the son of the Malifowl deity Neolion, which is an important deity because I think there's a constellation based off this deity. But I don't think there was a reason why the Bunyip killed this dude. It just kind of happened. He was just like, I'm in the river, and then got eaten. So yeah, this cryptid has the boogeyman trope and the sort of all-powerful wild animal that can go toe-to-toe with gods. They're not necessarily for evil reasons. I think the Bunyip just fights sometimes. But other than that, it's just kind of dangerous, and it has magic in some legends and connections to the Skyworld afterlife. But yeah, I couldn't find what those connections were because no article talks about it. I just saw that somebody mentioned it. It's got a connection to getting people to the afterlife to a degree. Couldn't find it though. But I remember there being an article where it's like he's got like a sort of psychopomp connection to the afterlife. He can take you there, and it didn't share any other details besides that. So who's to actually say? Any thoughts so far that you'd like to share?
I just find it. I think the big thing that I find interesting is how consistent it is, even with all these different versions of him, of the Bunyip existing. Like, there's that consistency of, like, there's this terrifying thing in the river that's snatching up all our kids or something like that. It's I don't know, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. I think that's what I always come back to with this one, like, story, is that's the linchpin of the story. The fact that there's, like, an actual practical keep the children out of the water thing that everybody's actively worried about, and actively worried about it to the point where there's a legend on all parts of the river about it.
Yeah, and I can see how, like, describing a creature like this, it's really doesn't sound too far off from a creature that may actually exist in Australia.
Yeah. There are other parts of it, though, that throw a whole wrench into the thing. But we'll get to that in a sec.
Okay, good.
I did want to write, though, interestingly enough, prolific Australian folklorists such as Udguru Nunakal and Dick Ruffsley, who wrote a lot about the legends of Australian Dreamtime type stuff, have never mentioned the Bunyip before. And I combed through a lot of their writings to find it. But it's like interesting that a lot of really prolific people writing about it aren't going to write about this specific thing. But who's to say what that means? It's my little devil's advocate moment.
I just think that's interesting. Like, it's such a localized legend, and yet, even the people who write about Australian folklore don't mention it. That is kind of weird.
Yeah. That's my little devil's advocate moment, everybody. I'm good at podcasting. And fair argument. The next...
This is my first...
Oh, yeah, sorry.
This is my first podcast, everybody. Give me a break.
You're doing a great job, actually, I will say.
Thank you.
You have a good voice for podcasting and a good flow with improv.
I appreciate it.
It gets trickier the more you drink.
Well,
the improv part
there.
For specifically me personally.
Yeah, that's fair.
Moving on though, now we're going to jump into the part of the story where European people get really excited about the Bunyip. They're here, they're looking at it. One of the very first European people to see the Bunyip straight up, he saw it, was William Buckley, who lived with the Wattarong people from 1803 to 1835. While out on various lakes and rivers of the western side of Port Phillip Bay in Victoria, he often saw a, quote, very extraordinary amphibious animal which the natives called Bunyip, of which I could never see any part except at the back, which appeared to be covered in feathers of a dusky grey colour. It seemed about the size of a full-grown calf. That's what I like to call an ox, ye moron. Sometimes larger, and the creature only appeared when the weather was very calm and the water very smooth. He also noticed that the people there avoided waters where the Bunyip was known to live all the time and would leave gifts of eels as a tribute. There's also another story where he heard that a husband and a wife indeed found a significant amount of eels in one body of water, but apparently this was a trap, and when the husband went back to town to drop off the first handful of eels, his wife was snatched away while she was in the water, never to be seen again. He also really wanted to, moving forward in the story, Buckley, the dude writing about this, also really wanted to spear the Bunyip himself, but everyone there told him it was a horrible idea, and Buckley actually agreed. He was like, okay, I'll take your word for it. This would probably go poorly if I tried it. So, good on him.
So, that's cool. To have, I guess as somebody who's not somebody who has a background of okay, these cryptid stories are cool, but I don't know if I believe in this kind of paranormal mumbo jumbo.
Yeah.
To hear a story of some outsider coming in and living with the natives, and then just having this thought of what if this thing is real? It's kind of cool. This was at one point something that terrified people, and it especially terrified this guy who came in from the outside, who was like, maybe we shouldn't go after this thing.
Yeah, it's always interesting too, because he both was like, this could be real, and I'm going to respect it and not touch it. And he also didn't go to a weird trophy hunter mindset. He's just like, I'll leave this one be. I'll just watch it. And I think that's neat. I like this man for doing the situation the way he handled it.
I appreciate stories too that talk about how people act out of fear, because you hear a lot of stories from history, and it's all these people did great things, but you don't really hear about people being if this thing's real, maybe we shouldn't mess with it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool.
History is not only written by the victors, but history is written by the people who are being dramatic. People who are chill very rarely make it in history.
Yep. Agreed.
Another encounter just to jump into the script again, because I'm always horrible at segueing at that. In 1847, George French Agnes describes walking around with the Marundi people near present-day Swan Reach in southern Australia, and having them talking about a water spirit known as the Bunyip, but this one is described as a giant starfish that walks onto, or just like wanders onto the shore of the river sometimes and pulls people into the river like a giant starfish. This is the only story featuring a giant starfish. It is very much so an outlier.
Giant starfish.
Giant starfish.
That doesn't. I mean, I guess a part of that painting was the kind of long, spindly legs.
Yeah.
It's a little bit reminiscent of that.
Oh yeah, those like creepy pipe cleaner looking starfish. I don't think I know the name of the species.
I wish I knew.
But yeah, I kind of see that now that I got the tab open and I'm looking at it. Yeah. This is I guess the painter was like, I'm gonna go balls to the wall with the starfish angle.
Yeah, I guess they took every single story and was like, what if they're all right?
Yeah. There's also the Chalicum Bunyip, which is a chalk carving found that's depicting the Bunyip straight up. And it kind of looks like the Loch Ness Monster a little bit, but with more like, it's vague, so it's like you can see that it's got the long neck and flippers and stuff, but it could have seal proportions. Apparently, this Chalicum Bunyip chalk carving near Ararat, Victoria, was first recorded in the Australian newspaper in 1851. The drawing was drawn out of respect for the being, after it, according to legend, killed some spearmen who attacked it. The drawing was, apparently, 11 paces long and 4 paces in extreme breadth, which is the quote. And I think that that's to scale. They were like, this is how big it was straight up, and this is how big we're going to draw it. But sadly, even though the drawing was able to make it to the newspaper, the original outline was destroyed over the course of history. I could try to actually look up a picture of that, too. Send that to you.
Yeah, I'd like to have a look at that. I'm glad it at least made it into some kind of publication.
Ba-da-ba-bum-bum-bum. There you go. But yeah, I think somebody was able to either... Or yeah, there's the like one that says Figure 2, the Bunyip, is more reminiscent of it. I think somebody dedicated it to a sketchbook or something for the picture I actually sent you.
I feel like this drawing reminds me of one of those things where, like, if you look at it, if you like turn it over, it looks like something completely different.
Oh, like the bunny duck thing.
Yeah, like if you look at like the left part is the head, it looks like like a Tyrannosaurus Rex or like the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah.
But if you look at like the right part as the head, it looks like a blue whale.
Oh, I see that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I don't know. It's weird.
Even weirder, though, would be if there was a whale in the river, because I don't think the river is that big.
Yeah. I don't think it's common for there to be river whales just floating around.
Yeah. If somebody finds one of those, I will make an episode on it, because it feels like something that will end up on this podcast if it's real.
River whale, yeah.
The river whale. What if I just made up a cryptid for an episode? What if I
You might as well.
I'll do it, but I won't warn the audience when it happens, so you gotta be on your toes. This one's real. This one's real.
You get to the end of the episode, and then you're like, okay, April Fools. Just kidding.
I know it's September, but April Fools.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like...
Well, now they're gonna expect it on any month but April, so I have to do it on April now.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be on any day except April Fools.
Yeah. Well, everybody in the audience, keep on your toes. Patreon subscribers, I'll let you know when I do it.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I don't have any yet.
We just recorded that conversation, so now everybody listening is just going to be like...
No, I have to prepare.
Yeah, they're just expecting every single one to be like a fake one now.
But I do see what you're saying with this, with the... Like, it's a vague enough shape where it could be anything. I do think that if it's depicting any rendition of the Bunyip, it's going to be the one that has the seal body and the, like, dog horse head. I think there's a picture of one having a dude in its mouth. I think that's the closest that this carving looks like.
Yeah, I was looking at a few of those, and, some of them are fairly consistent in terms of, the long body and the, kind of terrifying snarl on their face.
Yeah. It was kind of like a cat-like energy a little bit with a couple of the pictures. I think that's neat.
Yeah, a little bit.
Another version of this is described by a dude named James Dawson in the 1870s. He met up with the Buruwan clan of Australian Aboriginal people and heard a story about a bunyip attacking two brothers who were out hunting for swan eggs. In this story, the bunyip looks like a sort of seal dude with a panther face and koala ears and a unicorn horn, and it swims. So...
That's a lot.
It just keeps on changing. This is the TF
That's a lot
monster.
That's funny.
This story is interesting, though, because in it, the bunyip has the ability to change the flow of water itself to wash one of the brothers into his mouth where he was eaten. The other brother could only sneak into the bunyip's lair later and retrieve his brother's bones, because there was no hope after he entered his mouth.
Oh my god.
This is the Vor arc.
Huh. I do want to say, just going back to the description of that sounds like a drawing that I made as a 5-year-old come to life. Just like, I'm gonna give this the body of a seal.
Yeah, a lot of the descriptions make me just describe 5 animals at once, because I think a lot of people who are seeing it for like a brief glimpse were like, I think it had these emu feathers with a rattlesnake tail, and who's to say? There's another story that the dude James Dawson that is describing heard, wherein some dudes were fishing and they were pulling in lures with raw meat, and then one of them reeled in a half calf, half seal, long-tailed, panther-faced guy who had feathers. I love describing the bunyip. It's always a full line of text.
Why does something
underwater have
in
feathers?
The water have feathers?
Who's to say?
Okay. You know what? I'll buy it.
Thank you. Yeah, bunyips canon, everybody. This little child bunyip, though, did a lot of crying, and that attracted a larger creature of the same description, also known as the bunyip mother. The mother bunyip made threatening gestures to move the fisherman, to try to, get him, because he was holding onto her baby. But the fisherman, in his infinite wisdom, decided that the baby bunyip would make a really great engagement gift for his fiancée. So he pulled up his spear and was like, try to catch me if you can. And so the mother bunyip, A, rose the water levels significantly enough to flood the whole area that they were in and also the village. And then B, she turned literally everybody in the village into black swans. The end.
Okay. That was a huge leap.
Yeah.
Right at the end.
Little plot twist.
That was... Because I can see how, they would experience, some village might experience a flood and be like, oh, it's a supernatural phenomenon. And, describe it with, something like the bunyip. But that last part caught me completely off guard.
The swans make it just a tad bit more dubious to the validity.
I kind of love, but now I kind of get the feathers, right?
Oh yeah.
So
the bunyip is just somebody who it's like the bunyip keeps transforming people into itself. It's fun, making new friends. Another sighting involves a Eugene Crawford, or also a Louise McNeil. I think 2 people at the same time were living in the same house. And there was a guy whose family just colonized in Australia, so he grew up there. And he records talking with an, at this point, unnamed servant girl who describes the bunyip as, the bunyip lives in creeks and waterholes. His shape was a bit vague, but he was also as big as a cow and covered in long black hair, very curly. He made a sound like a mopoke, I don't know what that is. I think it's a bird. So he was probably nocturnal. From what I can gather, it's a nocturnal bird. Apparently, in contrast to most legends, wherein the Bunyip will get you if you go into the wilds, children, watch out. In this story, the Bunyip kind of played the role of Santa Claus, in as much as he decided he'd be chill with the nice kids, but then he'd destroy the naughty kids. There's also a lot more stories like this. There's the seal dog thing. That's the most common sighting by people just reporting it around the day. And then the emu head, seal flipper, horsetail, panther face rendition being the second most cited version of the Bunyip. I'm just going to call it the feathered seal and the dog seal. Those are the two ones.
So this person described it as nocturnal, right?
Oh yeah, I kind of just moved on from that part of the story. Let's go back to it. Very sorry.
Well, I feel like that's a big part of, like why some kind of story like this would exist, is because you're seeing it at night. So, you're not going to be able to describe it fully. It's like, yeah, of course it had the body of a seal.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Like, if you can see it during the day, you might get more of its features, but
once it's at night, it could just be any shape of mass, and then your mind fills in the gaps imagination-wise.
Yeah, and or anybody who's seen it in detail has not lived to tell the tale.
Yeah, that's also probably the case, too. The Bunyip is very capable of murdering people, more so than most, if any, cryptids. Because it's not like Bigfoot gets you. There are a couple stories where Bigfoot gets you, but like maybe 1 out of 500.
I want to read those stories.
I've heard about them before, and some of them are like, that's goofy. Okay, this is entirely unrelated to this story, but it's wild because anytime there's like a, oh my god, Bigfoot just killed my boyfriend story, like the police will get involved, and then it's like a murder investigation now, and it's like, well, nobody's gonna think Bigfoot did it because that's not something that law people are trained to think. And so anytime there's like an unsolved crime or something, some people are going to jump on and be like, oh, Bigfoot did it, and then nothing's going to happen because it's not like you can put Bigfoot in prison. It's a very weird situation where to verify a story of a cryptid murdering somebody is the trickiest thing in the world.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I'm glad that made sense. I rambled.
That's really funny, though. I mean, I don't know how to formulate my thought on this.
That's
but
fair.
Bigfoot's just kind of one of those, like, it's not something like, oh, like Mothman, it like stands on the side of the road and it like stares at you,
I love Mothman.
And it terrifies you. Bigfoot's just kind of like hanging out, You don't think of him as a big scary monster. He's just kind of like, snooping along in the forest. He's not trying to hurt anybody.
That being said, you probably haven't listened to this episode yet, but me and another friend decided to come up with the top 10 most eligible cryptid bachelors, and Mothman did make number 1, so I will have to ask you to refrain from any Mothman slander, because it will be incorrect. He's a beautiful name.
You know what? You're totally right, and I apologize.
I appreciate you. Learning is one of the most human things there is. Anyway, I don't think the Bunyip made that list. I feel like the Bunyip should have made that list now. I feel bad.
Probably should. I mean, considering, if you do these recordings with a lot of furries,
yeah.
Probably should have.
You know what? We're going to retcon the cryptid list. I think Bunyip is going to be 7, and I don't know who's number 7, but move down the list from there. Re-listen to that episode, everybody. Report it back to me. We were talking about it's hard to see things in the nocturnal night.
Yes.
I agree with that. That a lot of the variances in the sightings are probably because people are seeing this guy at night, and it's just like the imagination's... especially if people are told what it looks like, they're probably going to imagine that and then paint that onto the like shadowy mass that they're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely.
That being said, the Bunyip does get described in tandem with the aforementioned mermaid-esque Mulgiwonk. And it's like interesting because that'll get labeled as like a water spirit a lot of the times. For those who forgot about 20 minutes ago, that's the guy that pulled in the steamer and then a guy shot it and then got really sick. There's also another legend associated with specifically the Mulgiwonk, wherein he stole a child, but a man was able to sneak into the underwater lair, and then he rubbed himself with oil because that helped, and then he rescued the child. He actually got him out of the lair. But in less folkloric memory, there are instances where people hear booming along the river, and that's the Mulgiwonk thing. It makes the loud noise that makes people sick. And some people point to certain watering holes being as bunyip lairs, and like are going to avoid those from here on out. And sometimes the corpse of something that nobody knows how to describe showed up, but there are no pictures that I could find. And like the only one recorded corpse was recorded in writing, and it was described as a dead, rotting Mulgiwonk on the shore of Lake Alexandria, and it was only ever talked about, and no pictures were taken. So it's like, I believe in it, but it will require a bit of faith in the way that people tell their stories.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? When you don't have any photos of this thing, how do you describe it?
Yep. And it's like anything that looks like a decomposed thing can wash on shore, and you're like, that could be the Bunyip / Mulgiwonk.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too. Like, like there's that famous photo of the blobfish, right?
Yeah.
And like,
I thought that was a real fish. I'm stupid.
Well, it's like it's a deep sea fish, right? So.
Okay, cool.
It looks completely different in its natural habitat.
I thought you were gonna say that wasn't real for 1 second.
Yeah, like it doesn't look like, the photos of it that you see. It doesn't actually look gross in its natural habitat. It's just, like a fish, like a normal fish.
That makes sense. I guess, yeah, because there's the water pressure that kind of like is to be taken effect with something like that. That'll change the appearance if the pressure's different.
Absolutely. Yep. So yeah, I mean that's I'm sure like that's if something like that washes ashore, it's like, what in the world could this be? Yeah.
At first blush, I'm tempted to say that the Bunyip is like mostly going to be a blanket term for 3 or 4, if you count the starfish, cryptid type things. And all being considered, I just think that using Bunyip as a way to describe water spirits or things is an incredibly valid description, especially since like some of the things can be misconstrued crocodiles, misconstrued seals maybe, and I'll get to that. But like if there's a cryptid in the water, maybe a couple of them are going to be described as the Bunyip despite being like multiple different things.
Right.
Going back to my notes, can we match these dudes to any real life animals? Probably not the mermaid. That's like a mermaid type thing and hard to match to a real life animal. And probably not and yes, this is a copy and paste thing. I don't want to type it twice. Emu head, seal flipper, horsetail, panther face, steel dog. But the straight up steel dog could just be like seals. And I did look it up though, and it's very, very rare that they'll enter the river at all from the ocean. And if they do, they never really go further than a couple dozen miles in. So it's tricky to be like, that's a seal. But it's not like an entirely impossible thing to happen. Mm-hmm. That being said, every zoologist ever in the late 1800s decided that this, since this was a cryptid-y thing, they were going to say that it was a seal or a dugong. Dugongs being found in North Australia, nowhere near the Murray River. Though who's to say if they actually saw something and were like, we're going to call this a hoax and we're done. Or if they like never saw anything and they're like, well, I haven't found anything, we're done. There were couple hoax specimens brought back to London that ended up just being a seal. Like, they're like, this is the seal. We're not going to give this any more thought. And then it got called out immediately. And then there's the Australian bittern, which is a small bird and not a bunyip-sized thing at all. It's, like, small. But it does have, like, a sort of booming mating call. And I looked it up because it's weird sounding. But these birds are crazy endangered. So it's not like it's easy to come across one ever.
Yeah. Well, would you hear them singing at night? Because not likely, probably.
Probably not. Yeah.
Huh.
I think
guess
that's
maybe,
a little loose end.
Yeah. But I can see how, like, you know, how a rare species that you don't see much anymore might elicit some kind of, like, response where you're like, oh, what was that?
Yeah. Especially if you're, like, not expecting it and then you hear something weird and then your mind goes to Bunyip first.
Right.
There's also one more theory I had, which is according to rock carvings and paintings and such, that creatures a la the Bunyip may have existed in the past, but were extinct even before colonizers got to Australia, which seems tricky to believe without human intervention at first, because I don't know of a lot of cases of animals just going extinct without humans making it happen, and or a meteor. But I don't think I know enough about the process of extinction to say that with full confidence. Like, so there could be cave paintings of a creature that existed, like, maybe in the thousands or something, like 1200s or something, went extinct, but the cave paintings are up so people remember kind of what it looked like, and then that's where the Bunyip came from.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, because I can see, people finding things like that and kind of drawing their own conclusions from it.
Yeah. I can buy into that too. It's hard to say though, because I also imagine on the other side of that you'd probably find a fossil at a point.
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah, that's true. It's hard to be in Australia without getting bitten by a large spider.
True.
I think I know people from Australia. I bet it's like not every day that you see one, but just the thought of one day of the year I'm gonna have to see a spider the size of a crock pot. I don't want to ever do that, and so I don't want to go to Australia. It sounds miserable.
Yeah, I don't really plan on ever going. It sounds, I'm sure it's fine, but it sounds terrifying.
I have arachnophobia, probably.
I have whatever you call big arachnophobia.
Oh yeah, I think I have limited arachnophobia. Like, where if it's the size of a fist plus, I don't want to see it ever.
Yeah, like if I see like a spider in my apartment, I'm like, oh, whatever, just let it outside. But like, I would just see something that would be like a massive spider, and just slowly go to grab my flamethrower because I'm just assuming I have one of those.
Yeah.
So that I can kill it with fire.
One should have one in Australia.
Could not deal with that.
I think I can. This is a tangent, so you're welcome, audience. You get to know a little bit more about the personal lives of the audience. Sometimes the legend isn't the most important part of the podcast. I've been in a room with a tarantula because I know people that have pet tarantulas, and I have felt some semblance of comfort. I'm not going to call it like sheer comfort, but I can get used to a tarantula, and that's it. And it takes a couple minutes, and I'll have to stare at it the whole time. I don't want it to go missing.
I don't think I could ever get used to a tarantula.
It takes a considerable amount of willpower on my part.
It's too much. Here's what's funny is, like, we've been talking about the bunyip this entire time, and it's been fun to, like, talk about it, and yet this is the first time I've felt like the heebie-jeebies while
Yeah.
recording this is talking about actual real spiders.
Yeah, well, it doesn't help that the bunyip's cute, but it also doesn't help that spiders are more horrifying than most cryptids.
Yes, agreed.
This is a spider slander podcast now. If you love spiders, then get a better hobby, please. This is spider slander, and I'm for it. That being said, no, this is a horrible segue. I'm doing it anyway. Ready to talk about some modern sightings of the bunyip? Modern meaning post-1900s.
Let's do it.
Cool. In 1952, a man by the name of Joe Mason, of Nagan-Garuka descent, claimed to regularly see a mulguwank in the Murray River, closest to Manham in South Australia. He describes the fish lower half humanoid, upper half dude. That made sense, right? Because it didn't to me.
No.
Cool, thank God.
I was like, wait a minute.
I think I'm using way too many words to describe what I've already described the mulguwank as being. Moving on. It stated that it looked around 150 pounds, and he could... just mermaid. Oh, Gesundheit.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We're seeing a little mermaid dude weighing around 150 pounds, and he could always tell when he was nearby because it made distinct ripples in the water, and it would breach here and there. He saw it very often, but not when anybody else was around.
That's suspicious.
A little bit. I'll believe him though, because I think it's neat. I think having a little mermaid friend is neat. I believe
I agree.
Not out of logic. I believe out of wishful thinking.
Yeah. I just believe because I want a mermaid friend. I think that would be just really cool.
It'd be very fun, and I would enjoy it.
Nobody has to know about her. You know, it's just I don't want people to think I'm crazy.
Of
I
course.
just want a mermaid friend.
I think I was about to say, if I saw a cryptid, I'd keep it to myself. But I think I've told a story about me seeing a ghost at least 3 times on the podcast now, so that would have been a lie. I would tell everybody. The next story, though, takes place in the 1960s in the village of Buruwan, southwest of Sydney. There's this phenomenon called the Buruwan Bunyip, where nobody really saw it as much as they heard a bull-like roar throughout the local swamp. And a creature was spotted here and there, described as having a long neck and covered in feathers again, being around the height of a tiger-ish kind of feline animal cryptid thing, but with the ability to stand on 2 legs. Something like a featherless seal. Or a feathered seal, because seals don't have feathers.
Yeah, I was about to say that's a bit redundant.
Just a tad bit. Sadly, I didn't get a lot of names of anybody who reported seeing it, just a lot of I saw this thing sometimes. But I did find one name coming from an anecdote of an Ed Wolfrey, a bartender in Buruwan village, and he described the roar being loud enough to occasionally knock bottles and stuff off of the top ledge of the bar. And it even scared away a team of 3 railway workers who were working at a site that they were working on, heard the roaring, saw the bunyip, and were like, we're getting out of here immediately. They got very afraid of it.
So, is there anything that could describe that roar?
Bittern bird that I was talking about has the booming roar, but it's not like there's a lot of roaring animals in Australia, if I'm not mistaken. I think most of the things aren't wolf-esque, besides maybe a dingo, and I don't feel like it'd roar.
Right.
That being said, though, the roaring did stop at the end of the, in the middle of the 70s when the swamp was dammed and it didn't have any water flow in 1974. Nobody saw it or heard the bunyip since then.
Spooky.
Indeed. This next story isn't very modern at all, but it took place kind of almost at the 1900s threshold. In 1891, when a man named Darby McGrath was traveling through a swamp on horseback, when suddenly the horse stopped right in his tracks for no reason, and Darby felt a chill run up his spine. He then heard a noise almost like a baby crying, while a large, seal-bodied, long-headed, dog-shaped horse thing started moving out of the water, cloaked in shadow, which is, going back to the one point you're talking about, nocturnal stuffs are hard to see. And it was coming towards him, even though it still sounded like a baby noise was coming from the creature, like he was mimicking a baby. Darby, not buying it for a second, dug his spurs in, and the horse ran for 5 straight miles, soaking wet through the swamp even, without calming down until it got to that 5-mile part. Like, the horse was more afraid than the dude was.
So it sounded like he said it sounded like a baby?
Yeah. Like a human baby.
I guess I guess that reminds me of like a, some kind of siren thing that lures you into the water.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Although I think this is one of the only instances besides the eels that the people were gathering for food where the bunyip is using lures to grab people. Mm-hmm. But it has happened with, I guess, the eels now that I'm thinking about it. So yeah, there's like a siren type energy to it. Besides that, though, admittedly, there are not a lot of modern stories that I could find online besides the ones that I just mentioned. Makes me sad because I wish the bunyip were still around, but part of the fact that the internet is telling me that not a lot of people see it anymore means that it might not be around anymore, sadly. There's a lot of... oh, sorry, you're going to say something.
No, go ahead.
There's a lot of sightings of the yowie, which is one that still gets cited to this day all the time. But that's not a bunyip at all. That's just Bigfoot, but in Australia. And that's not what this episode's about. So we're moving on.
Bigfoot, but in Australia.
Yeah. Bigfoot is... There's always a Bigfoot in every country. Every country has Bigfoot.
How can there not be? I mean, like, it's... I'd love the idea of, like, just some, tall, hairy dude walking around in the woods.
I like tall, hairy men in the woods.
Yeah.
I do. I really just love them. Did you say cutting that out? Coward? Actually, did you say that or did you say something else?
No, I was just gonna say, like, I mean, like, if I didn't have to work for a living, like, I'd want to be a tall, hairy dude just wandering through the woods, right?
I thought you for 1 second that you said, cut it out, we can't simp over Bigfoot, but that's a way better take, and I stand it. I stand it. I stand it. I tolerate that take.
Love it.
I would love to be a tall, hairy man in the woods, but alas, I am a sort of short, hairy man in the woods. I'm not going to claim that I'm short.
But alas, I am. I work a 8 to 5 job and am 5'4".
I don't think I have a job, which means I don't have an excuse. But I'm going to pretend I have no excuse. But yeah, if we can't, our desire to be long, hairy men in the woods is, alas, not near us.
I think that's the scariest part of this entire podcast. Just hearing you say that.
Dreams getting crushed.
I'm never going to realize my full potential.
We can try for it. We're gonna go dark next month. I'm gonna be in the woods.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think my supervisors would take it very well.
And neither, I guess, Zuma. I'll get a job once I get my visa. I promise everybody. I gotta get married to do this. God, there's so much bureaucracy involved in German weddings, and that's a tangent. Unrelated to the bunyip whatsoever. I think we're getting close to the conclusions, but there is one thing I wanted to talk about before I jump to conclusions, and that's the Murray Bridge Bunyip. I'm going to talk about it in a second. It's a very horrifying looking animatronic in a town for no reason. But before I talk about it, I'm going to send Twister a picture of it. God damn it, I gotta do it over Google. Don't look it up, I promise the surprise will be enchanting. Here's Everybody also, I don't care what you're doing. If you're driving, pull over. If you're in your home, perfect. Look up the Murray Bridge Bunyip. Here's what he looks like.
What? What am I looking at?
A very cursed thing.
Oh my god, what?
Here's what it is. In 1972, in the town of Murray Bridge, Australia, along the Murray River, a guy named Dennis Newell just randomly decided to build and install an animatronic in the middle of this park for no reason that would jump out of the water under the Sturt Reserve, Murray Bridge. And it is hiding under the water until you pay like 20 cents, and then it comes out of the water and then lunges forward, making a roaring noise. That was the intention. I don't know why he put it in the middle of nowhere, but he did. The water damaged both the machine animatronic itself, making it look like a decayed thing, and also the sound box, so that it would make a horrifying, distorted roar, and it can be heard from like sometimes a mile away, and the whole thing looked like it was falling apart.
I was about to say, I'm looking at like older photos of this, and it looks, because the photo that you sent me is just this like.
I'm actually gonna get to
weird,
that. You're not looking at older photos. You're looking at the renovation.
Creature. Am I really?
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay.
It's so cursed.
That's so weird.
Actually, I'll get to that in a second because I have a video I can share with you too. That's even more cursed.
Okay.
I might just share it with you and do a little like everybody in the podcast or just editing thing because I don't know copyright law or whatever. For fun facts, before I get to this, Newell named this Bert, and then Bert had a baby, and then there was another thing in the water, and that was Bertha. There were two of these horrifying things. And they were vandalized so often, and they looked so horrible, that they took the baby out of the cage and left Bert by himself. In 2017, apparently, or they actually replaced parts of it in 2000, but not all the way. And then in 2017, the animatronic also started to leak oil. And so it emerged fucking pitch black. And then in 2018, they actually finally gave the animatronic a makeover. And that's the picture you're looking at right now.
Okay, I can't believe that's the makeover.
Yeah, that's what they decided to make it look like that.
I'm looking at the thumbnail and I already hate it.
Yeah. The Murray Bridge Bunyip is truly the most horrifying part of this.
Oh my god, let's take a look at this. Alright, I'm excited. / not at all. Gotta find oh my god.
It's so cursed.
It's funny because like as it's starting to come out of the water, it vaguely looks like Darth Vader.
Just a little. Yeah, I feel that. It has a very smooth domed head. For those of you, I guess jumping back into, I don't think I made a note, but to those of you in the audience who haven't yet pulled over and looked up a video of this, which you need to do immediately, I don't even know how to describe it. Jeez, it's like it's got a big mouth. It has some eyes. It looks like asbestos that got water damage and mold is now in the shape of a man's thumb with a mouth and eyes.
I think that's even being a little too kind to it.
Yeah, I'm really underselling it here. It's horrifying in a concept.
Yeah, you guys need to look at this yourself because it's quite the spectacle of gross, horrifying animatronics.
It will haunt dreams. There's gotta be a creepypasta based on it. That's the thing. That's what always gets me. Somebody just was like, I have an idea for something to put in the middle of this small town for no reason. This.
I just love that, like, this is... The animatronic thing is more terrifying than the Bunyip itself.
Yeah. It's more horrifying than most things I've talked about on the podcast so far. Just in
Oh my
general,
God.
it's so cursed.
Just looking at some of these photos with like the like grainy filter over them
Yeah.
just makes it look even worse.
If you have a chance, I think I might try to get it into the video somehow if I can do, or into the podcast, just the sound that the bunyip makes, because that feels like something I can get away with without violating copyright law. But the sound
Right.
is horrifying and loud.
Yeah, I didn't get the chance to listen to the sound, but yeah, I'll have to hear it.
It's great. I'm glad that I could actually inject nightmare fuel into this podcast that was like starting to get a little cutesy. Nah, it's scary. It's scary. Foxxo Esoterica is here.
Oh my God, this is. I've never seen this thing. It's great slash not at all
It's
great.
just twisted.
Yeah.
Unpleasant.
Oh man.
That brings us to our conclusions, though. Before I get into anything, what are your takes? What's your bunyip hot takes?
Hot takes. Well,
You
I
believe
mean,
him?
you know, I think that I guess where I stand is like the story of the bunyip. I feel like comes from a very real place. It probably comes from a place of fear, knowing that like we're in Australia. There's probably something out there that's gonna eat us.
Yeah.
This is something that can really haunt the dreams, and I can see why, you're running away from something in the dark. I can see how that turns into a story, and then, you can use that to terrify other people or to keep kids in line. I mean, it feels very similar to, a lot of these old folk tales that are kind of used as a way to, either to kind of teach children things.
Yeah.
So, I guess that's kind of where I stand on it. But I love everything that's come out of it, like except for the
The Murray Bridge bunyip.
animatronic, which I do kind of love, but mostly hate. But like the painting, the fact that there's all these really cool stories about it, the fact that like it's consistent, even though there's a lot of different versions of it. The fact that like it's this consistent, like there's something in the water that's gonna snatch up the people in our village, and there's something very primal about that I feel like a lot of cultures probably share that this fear of the unknown, and something that they can't see is and is beyond their power
Yeah.
to really do anything about. I can see why that would be such a horrifying thing to people.
Yeah, especially something that has the ability to be in the water, to strike from the water and get you pretty easily, and
Right.
hunt at night. Like, there's a lot of degrees to which you're not going to focus on it. You're going to be afraid of it and run away from it, and then the folklore develops from there.
Right.
I think,
Yeah.
just like, I usually, when I do my own conclusions, I like to, like, bring up stuff I've talked about on the podcast before and do a little connections corner. That being said, a lot of times if I'm doing a cryptid type thing, it's like, is this cryptid a biological dude? Are we dealing with an alien dude? Are we dealing with a dude that's magical? And the more I think about it, I think the bunyip definitely has the ability to fall into this camp of, like, a biological thing that just, like, hunts people, and I don't think it's around anymore, like, at this point in time, if it ever were. I think it definitely existed. I think I'm going to say that. I don't think it's, like, a magical thing, but I think that something bunyip-esque existed and hunted people and is scary, and I don't think it's around anymore.
Yeah. I as a biologist, I can't really come to the same conclusion.
That's okay.
But
I'm the witchy woo boy.
But I do like I do like that idea that that I just like that you don't hear stories like that anymore, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I'm glad that it exists. I guess is where I stand.
I'm glad to be able to have shared it with you.
Yeah. This has been really fun.
Yeah, you've been a fantastic guest, and I totally appreciate you having come on. You are totally invited anytime.
Yeah, thank you. I'll definitely join in on more of these as long as the audience enjoys my presence.
For sure. Yeah, we got like maybe 12 people listening, probably more, sometimes less. 12 people are going to hype you in.
Count me in. I'll be number 13.
You might want to like wait around a sec. That's cursed.
Well, yeah. That's not, yeah, you got a point.
Somebody unsubscribe real quick. But no, I appreciate it. I like this one. This one's fun to me because like the folklore part of it's fun, but I also really love talking about the animatronic. Because it's not like I could do a whole episode on that by itself, but I almost can.
I'm still looking at it, and I still don't know what I'm seeing.
I really can't tell. I don't know why it happened. It shouldn't have happened.
I love how it also got more horrifying as time went on. Like, they made this, like, kind of, like the old one looked very, you know, it looked new when it was first built, right?
Yeah.
And then they renovate it, and it looks even worse, and then the oil slick thing happens, and, like, it just gets more cursed, like, every passing year.
I think 2018 is literally the best it's ever looked, and I still don't want to look at it.
Ugh.
They just renovated the whole thing.
This is like, I think this is the first, this is like the only time during the podcast that I've felt speechless. I just don't know how to describe this thing or how to react to it because I hate it.
Yeah, I hope you can sleep tonight, and I also hope you show everybody.
Oh, I absolutely will. Karma's gonna hate this, but I'm going to show him.
Good.
So, yeah.
Wrapping things up now, a little bow. Do you have any final thoughts? Be them conclusions or just things you feel you want to chat about at all?
Nothing really. I appreciate you having me on the podcast. I definitely want to come back and do more of these. This is really fun.
Yeah.
I'm excited to kind of see more of the topics that you've covered so far, and you know, this is super fun looking at, you know, talking about old time cryptids, but sure would love to kind of join in on some of the more horrifying topics. I think that would be great. For sure.
I haven't like ever asked anybody this question, but like, are there any topics that you particularly have like an interest in that you think would be an interesting episode topic?
I really like just the more absurd, the better.
Yeah.
Like this was, it wasn't absurd until we got to the animatronic.
Yeah.
But I like the ones that are just really weird. Like the story you were talking about where it's like, oh yeah, like they went out fishing and then the village flooded and then they all turned into swans.
Oh yeah. I adore any story like that too.
What? Yeah, like it's that kind of stuff that I love. The just kind of the really absurd stories that, you know, maybe don't make any sense, but are just kind of fun to talk about.
It's always interesting to hear a story like that because it's like, it feels like nobody made that up. That's so weird. And then you're like, okay, what really happened? What is the metaphor for people turning into swans? What could that mean? Because it's not like obviously anybody's capable of making up anything because some artists are bonkers and do things like that. But like if it's some sort of metaphor for something, what happened?
I mean, I guess if I were to be a bird, I would want to be anything other than a swan.
Oh, do you have
swans
any swan slander?
Well, just swans are mean. Yeah.
That's true.
I'm not a fan of them. They're pretty, but
rude.
That's about all I can say for them.
They're like the temperament of geese, but they took a ballet class. That might even make them meaner.
I think that's probably the best way I've heard swans described by anyone.
Thank you. I'll slander swans.
Did you just say clander or slander?
I hope I said slander. Who's to say? Been imbibing.
It might just be Discord, so it's fine.
Yeah, I'll blame Discord. Yeah, I like doing that.
Yeah, or it could just be my hearing. We'll go with Discord.
Indeed. But yeah, I feel we did it. Bunyip discussed. We love him.
All right. Yeah. I love this one. This is super fun to talk about.
Yeah.
Especially coming at it from the perspective of as a biologist. It's just.
I love that perspective a lot.
It's kind of cool to like look at stories like this and be like, so how did this happen? Like what
For sure. I knew I was going to say like a cryptid for you. That one was on the top of my head. I knew that was going to happen. So you've got a good input on that sort of thing.
Could this be based on? So yeah, I thought it was really interesting.
Cool. I think I'm going to pause the audio and then the chat's going to go on still. And it's just going to be very weird. But thank you for coming on the episode again.
Yeah, not a problem.
Thank you all once again for joining this gnarly Outback piss-up. I decided I was going to do one Australian slang bit just once, and this one seemed fun. Now that quota's filled, though, let's see if we can't discern any more for our Murray Bridge Bunyip review corner. Tanya Peslavska says, "My sensitive 4-year-old would not come close, was too scared. 2-year-old seems to like it. For me personally, it's way too loud. 4 stars. Richard Keynes writes, "Tried to eat my children, but lost. Next time, mate. Next time." 5 stars. Trevor Tuttle writes, "Don't bother. A fiberglass monster bobbing up out of the water every 5+ minutes? Forget it." 1 star. Johnny Quitticcioli writes, "Lucky I was wearing the brown pants." 3 stars. And that will just about wrap up our little investigation on the Bunyip of Murray River. Thanks again to Twister the Husky for being my wonderful guest this evening, and thank you, audience, for also being wonderful. You can find Foxxo Esoterica on Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Spotify, and YouTube. You can also follow me on Twitter at FORSETIFOX, and you can support Foxxo Esoterica on Patreon and Coffee. At Forseti Fox for both. Thanks again to Sun El Chiquito for the podcast artwork, and if you just so happen to be out in the billabongs, let the Bunyip know that I'm sorry I didn't consider him when I was thinking of eligible cryptid bachelors. He's very much so dating material. But for now, good night everyone. Oh, I see. You're absolutely right. Goodbye. Oh shit, the book. Fuck.